1 second, guys. I made a boo-boo. All right, can we test the audio? No, we don't have auto. We have video. No, we don't have video. Now we have video. Do we have audio? I can hear you, but for some reason, it doesn't look like audio is coming into the studio. Yes, I can. 1 second. Yeah, I'm working on it, guys. So now it almost sounds like we have an echo. Okay, can we test audio real quick, please? Yeah, see, I hear you, but we're not getting it in the studio for some reason. Before you changed audio, we had no problem with audio. It looks like
What if we do this here on this side like this?
okay, now I can hear you.
All right. Well, we got it squared away.
All right.
I had
Okay.
the wrong thing muted.
Thank you. All right, I will apologize to our guest. The joys of every time we have to play with Apple, it doesn't like it. All right. We didn't get much time before we opened the gates. So here we are. So I do want to adjust a few things real quick. I want to center you guys up for our guests a little bit better. Much better. Okay. All right. Apple problems. All right. Sorry, guys. So let's start this fresh. Hi, I'm Dustin, also known as Rope Aficionado. And tonight, this is the Dominance Dialogues. We have Master Joshua and Cat with us, and our discussion topic is going to be from connection to collective. Master Joshua, Cat, do you mind introducing yourself and giving us a little bit about your experience, please?
Well, I'll actually let Mistress Cat go first. She was just covered this weekend that just passed. So please,
Yes,
ma'am.
well, hello. Yes, I suppose now we would call me Mistress Cat. I'll take a minute to get used to it. I have been in the leather lifestyle for some number of years, here most recently the last 15 years in New York City, where we founded the Kink Collective about 6 years ago, and we do full-time education events in the BDSM leather lifestyle and community, and it's sort of what I do.
My name is Joshua, I'm also known as Master Joshua to those in which I've earned my honorific and my slaves. I've been on my journey knowingly in the community level for about a dozen years. I've been hosting events for about a decade, just under a decade, maybe aroundish, and doing professional domination around the same time. I found my connection to my faith and purpose through this journey and through that co-founder of the Kink Collective. And our intention is to help people build and establish the types of connections that they know they can by our own journeys, our own processes.
But I hope they can.
By the hope they can.
Right.
So you hit on a word that I really like, faith. So a question that I put in the back burner that I didn't necessarily put up in the first 8 questions I sent you, because I wasn't sure if we'd touch on it, but since you brought it up, I'm going to kick in like the Kool-Aid man. And a little bit of research showed that your program does discuss spirituality. How do you incorporate that specifically?
So let me start with defining religion and spirituality as I process. Spirituality is how one person treats themselves through their belief system. Religion is how you treat another person through your belief system. So spirituality is internal, religion is external engagement and walking the walk, so to speak. So my path to faith and the BDSM leather lifestyle is, if this lifestyle and community is built on integrity, what does that mean? And what are the fruits that you bear when you lead a lifestyle that is leaning into faith, meaning integrity, right? That's like the footstone of all of it, is truth, and not manipulated truth, not convenient truth, not truth when only when it's easy, but especially when it's difficult. And the relationships that you can build, the fulfillment that I get through them myself, it's like, how can I help others find their way to these types of connections and relationships that they want to be in, and not the one that society dictates to us. But with that comes suffering and vulnerability. You have to process your past, you have to reflect, you have to connect with others, you have to lead by example. And the only way that you can actually achieve it is by doing it. And you can't read it in a book. You can't, it has to be done. You have to walk it.
It's not theoretical.
It's not theory. And the vulnerability and freedom that you get when you get to establish that type of connection and visibility, someone seeing you and hearing you and accepting you as you are, and you doing the same, it's like only dreams are made out of it. Because of course you can't have those types of relationships, because who else wants to be vulnerable and risk getting hurt? Some people do, because we can see on the other side of it that if I can be my authentic self, and everyone throws their words around and it sounds cool and fun, but it is painful. It is blood, sweat, and tears. But on the other side of it, it turns life from a horror story to like an adventure. And it's like it totally changes the lives that we're living.
Wow. So I didn't get to give you my disclaimer off. When I look down, I'm taking notes frantically, right? And I'm looking over here and taking video notes because, wow. So I'm not being rude, and I just wanted to be clear.
I do the same. We do the same, 100%.
Something that just, I don't know, kicked me in the head that you said was spirituality is internal and religion is external. I love concise thoughts. To be honest, I don't know if that sits with me and aligns with my definitions of spirituality and religion, but it kicked me in the head, I'll tell you that, because I like, what's the word I'm searching for? Concentrating down to the core of what something is. And for me, I was raised Lutheran. I was a church acolyte. I was in private schools most of my life. A lot of people don't realize that. At 18, I rebelled against dogmatic religion. Along all of that path, someone told me that all's God is a good, orderly direction. And that has sat with me very well. I need to sit on your statement, but thank you for kicking me in the head like that, because I've been on this path of searching for spirituality because I have faith. I personally believe that a good human needs faith in a higher power. How they define that, that's up to them. Wow. Crap, I just need to stop for a second.
Let me break it down a little more, because I actually got this from a priest that I work with. He's been a priest for 40 years. He became a priest when I was 2 years old, right? Yeah. And after our first session, because I have an intake process that takes 3-4 hours to complete. Like, I need to know who's sitting in front of me, and I need you to know particular information about yourself to have a conversation. And him and I met, and we kicked it off very well. And at the end of our first session, I actually had to walk with him and help him reconcile his relationship with what does God want from him. And he's a priest. He's been a priest as long as I've been alive. And so in some of these conversations, we spoke about spirituality and religion. And when he broke it down to me like that. And he's a Catholic priest. And when you look at the base of religion's doctrine, it's about human engagement, right? The commandments are what I won't do to another person, another soul, another human being. The integrity part of spirituality and religion is we do our best to be truthful externally, but how much do we lie to ourselves? And that's the hook to it, right? And that's the difference is we have a friend who is very, I'm gonna use the word spiritual because that's the approach that they have. And they are very giving to a fault, and they don't do their own work. They aren't truthful with themselves, and the dots don't align up because they're missing that part of self-truth, the things that they're not willing to unpack for themselves. And we sat and we spoken about it, and it was like they couldn't understand, and they would say, but I'm doing all the right stuff. I'm out there praying, I'm out there helping people, I'm out there doing this, doing that. And when we sat down and we spoke about, well, what are you doing about yourself? Oh, and that's where the blockages started coming in, where you have to give yourself the same grace and respect and priority above anything else, is to make sure you put your mask on first.
We were talking about that earlier today. Right? Like, you can't save anybody if you don't have your own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the good orderly direction, I have a history of being in recovery, and so I came into the lifestyle through that door. It wasn't until I was able to put down drugs and alcohol and pick up a sober way of life that I was able to give myself permission to explore this part of me that had always been a part of me, but that I just didn't have time, energy, enough shame to get out from behind, et cetera, to be able to start to explore. But so I've clocked about parallel time in that world in this. And I know a lot of things. I have a lot of shorthand terms for a lot of things, and I didn't make up a single one of them. And good orderly direction is one of them. There's a few ways to look at, a power that's greater than you, right? A power in the universe. The easiest form for me was to know that there was a power and that I wasn't it, right? As long as I could get clear about that distinction, I had a starting place. So how to characterize that power, evolves over time.
It's like there's a governing law. Something is governing existence mathematically. It had to have been designed for cause and effect. It's like ones and zeros. So it's
right. Well, I mean, Einstein says it at the end of his life. Einstein said this can't all be an accident. Like, one of the most brilliant scientific minds ever said, yeah, pretty much there had to be a prime mover or something, because it just didn't happen by accident.
Because much like yourself, I stepped away from religion young, right? I'm Latino. We grew up Catholic, and what was the other one?
Pentecostal.
I don't remember. And the soonest I could get away from it, I did, because if you can't show me evidence, I don't believe it. And the evidence came through this lifestyle, through taking chance, being vulnerable, having open and honest conversations, and seeing, again, the fruits that came from it. You don't ever have to remember a thing, because I have the worst memory. So it's like, if I don't manipulate or I don't do anything, there's nothing I can forget.
Right. Well, that's the benefit of truth telling.
Yeah. No, I touched a lot of irons getting here, but and they came from a lot of them, if not from Cat, from my slaves, the people in which I am the master of. Right? They were the ones calling me and holding me accountable on a lot of this stuff. particularly integrity and not lying. It's not about lying, but it's about omission. It's about managing
Mm.
information. It's like, no, dude, like either you trust me or you don't. And it's incredible, man. It's incredible. Like I cherish the scars of mistakes, of choices, because they give me more information.
He's note taking.
I love that. I love that. Cherishing the scars of your mistakes. I've talked about it often. I appreciate my failures more than my successes more often than not, because failure is an opportunity for growth. And it also teaches me a lot of what not to do. And if I know enough of what not to do, I can consistently repeat success. So as you have, I've touched that stove quite a few times because I didn't believe every burner could be hot or every edge could be hot, or heat rises according to thermodynamics. So the underside couldn't have been hot. And if I blow on it, it couldn't be, and I, hard head, soft ass, we'll say.
I like that.
Wow. Spinning. So we're 20 minutes into this conversation and we haven't even like touched to the actual questions that I proposed to you. And I do kind of want to get to that before we get too far in the discussion, because I think your history has a lot of value to this conversation. So the first question that I proposed for you two was, how did the two of you first meet, and what drew you to each other?
That's a long story, so I'll try to give a more abbreviated version if I can.
You got to start like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So my ex used to work and take photos for her late husband's BDSM parties 20 years ago.
Okay, so that's the backstory of the backstory, right? So I moved to New York 15 years ago for the person who who became my husband, and we did everything together. We had event spaces, we hosted parties, we did all kinds of things in the realm. The last space was a club called Decadence that I had on 7th Avenue between 26th and 27th in Manhattan. And then in July of 2017, he was diagnosed with cancer, a fairly aggressive, progressed form of liver cancer that he passed away from in November of 2017. While I sat Shiva, a woman came to me for Shiva, who was this woman, who I then heard about that she had a boyfriend. So that was the first unknown exposure that I had to Joshua's existence. And then, so that was in November. Then fast forward to January, I decided to do a memorial service, like a celebration of life for him. He was a very life-loving guy. And so Joshua came with the woman who became his ex, along with a bunch of other people. And so I met him around that time. And their relationship ended. My relationship clearly had ended. And then we got to know one another. And I was able to offer him a place to stay because he didn't have a place to stay. And
There was an ugly breakup that happened, and Kat was there to catch me when the breakup happened. And then this was around the Me Too movement time. Maybe about a year after the Me Too movement started, about a year and a half after. And this ex ended up weaponizing it. And so when the Me Too movement hit the community, the bad actors disappeared overnight. The profiles came down, the websites came down, they vanished. It's funny, we just had them pop up in our space recently. And before I could tell him I knew who he was, he disappeared again. Anyway, there. So that happened, and then bad relationships started getting pulled into it. And it became a very difficult time. Let's see, we broke up in May. This all started in November, and ultimately Cat's Club was closed because of harassment and stalking from the ex, reaching out to the management and calling the Department of Buildings. It just created she took our 3-year plan down to 3 months.
yeah, I had about 3.5 years slept on the lease where I was, and we had already been talking about what would happen
comes
next,
next.
how would we transition? We have these 3 years, and then it became
forgot
3
about that,
months,
yeah.
like right away.
And it
But the point of the detailed reason why I brought this up is to just, you know, give thanks for where thanks is due. And in July of 2019, I had no idea that March of 2020 was coming. And I would never have been able to keep that roof over my head. I would never have been able to afford that, the remaining 2 3/4 years, what would have been left on that lease.
from COVID.
So while it was tumultuous, it was traumatic, it was a lot of things, it was a blessing in disguise. And so I feel always compelled to say that, you know, there's always a silver lining. Sometimes you just don't know what it is until you get to it.
It's like you said, it's either success or a lesson.
Yeah.
It's
Well-
a success or a lesson.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just a success or a lesson, please.
Something that has done me very well that came more from my professional life. One of my business mentors kind of told me that most things in business are value neutral until we attach a value to it. And a lot of times when you lose money, it creates an opportunity for you to make money if you look. It gives you an opportunity to make a new connection if you look. It gives you an opportunity to become more efficient if you look, so on and so forth. And I've really tried to apply that to my life as much as I can. I don't know, the last decade or so, I've really tried to seek some Zen state, if we will, for lack of better terminology. And I really try to approach most things as that value neutral. It doesn't have value until I attach that. And I could be happy for bad reasons, or I could be sad for good reasons. It's all neutral until we determine how we want to respond to that. And I think that's like a key thing for emotional stability.
Yeah, I like the value neutral thing, because that happened last week. We got put into a position where it was like, okay, we have to make an adjustment, a big adjustment, but make the adjustment. And instead of looking at what we're losing, we're putting something down to free a hand up to do something else. And it's streamlined our next steps. It's like it made us have to look at what we have on the table to work with, and immediately 2 or 3 things came out of it. So it was like, yes, and, right?
Oh yeah, no, and I think a lot of times that power to be, whatever it may be for us as individuals, they intervene for whatever reason. They see more than we see, right? And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I can throw myself under the bus. And sometimes I'm pretty ambitious. Sometimes I have a full plate and I'm already asking for seconds. And I don't even know what to eat, right?
Yes.
And by the time I figure out what to eat, it's all cold. And I'm not going to beat the analogy to death, right? So, you know, call it divine intervention, whatever you will, but it's that higher power, that faith. And if we want to like bring it back to like BDSM specific, I really look at BDSM as part of my spirituality. You touched on accountability. I am a better Dustin when I have someone in my service. It holds me accountable. If I ask them to read, I better read. If I ask them to stay in shape, I better stay in shape. If I ask them to eat healthy, right? And I think for me, that's always been a core of spirituality. It's a core group of values or ethics with the general direction of positive impact on an individual's life. And I think it was the goddess Indigo that framed it to me this way, that if an S-type serves her, then she has the ability to serve the relationship. And that sat well with me. It's kind of made me not think, oh, I'm big bad Dustin. I want fed grapes at 3 a.m. or whatever other fantasy masters or doms come up with. And it really helps me to think about this as something bigger than me as an individual if my focus is on us. I'm not thinking about myself. I think that for me and my flavors of authority, whether you're on the left side or the right side of the slash, a lot of this is selfless acts.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
We were talking about today on TikTok. What was the question?
Positive
Positive characteristics, examples of DS. And like I immediately went to Batman and Alfred, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Alfred's his butler, Alfred's his submissive, but they support each other, right? I tell people, as the master, I'm just the head slave in charge, right? Because I'm here to provide space. Like, for example, my slave Natalie, I met her. She's significantly younger than me. And my intention with that relationship was to have her committed to a certain degree. When we got involved and we got to learning each other, and I got to see where she was within her own process of healing through her past and reflecting and integrating what she was learning, the ability to be what I needed wasn't there yet. And so what I said is, you focus on you and you be here for what you can be here for, because I need you to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else. And very much like you said also about walking the walk, it's like I have to lead by example, meaning I'm taking care of my stuff while you're taking care of your stuff, so that when we are together, I like to think of it as a sniper scout type of thing, where you have your partner, yeah, you're a spotter, not scout, you're a spotter. You have your main shooter, and then you have your spotter, and it's like you're both assassins, but one is leading and the other one's following. Meaning, when I say assassins, all my slaves are dominant women, right? They're not people who find they don't look for submissive experiences, but with me they're submissive because of the safety that I create for them and the permissions that they get to achieve their goals. If I support you, you support me, and we help motivate and push each other. And then this one, she just, Joshua, get up.
Well, it's funny because during the covering ceremony, when we were talking about it, right? Like where, and even this week as we've been talking about dominance, right? Where is my dominance? I mean, my dominance is in my service, right? My dominance is my service to those around me, to people in my leather family, to the community at large, to any of the other organizations that I show up to support, teach, schlep stuff around, like unload trucks.
If people only knew,
it's not from a place of submission so much as it is a service that I do, that's an expression of myself as a dominant person. And I know that's a little counterintuitive for some people, but that's how that manifests for me.
Yeah, service.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a phrase in the business world or the professional world, servant leader.
Yeah.
And I think that's like to delineate leader versus boss or dominant versus domineering. The easiest way for me to always think about that is a leader shows you what to do and a boss tells you what to do.
Yeah. And I've always been a leader. I've never been a boss. I before I was doing this full time, I was in the hospitality industry. And there's such a difference between a manager who goes to hospitality school and gets a degree and drops into a restaurant as a manager and has never washed a dish a day in their life, and those of us who would go from the ground up. I'm one of those, started as a dishwasher and worked my way up. We have very different management styles, right? I don't ever tell anybody to do something that I wouldn't do. Physically, if I couldn't or wouldn't do it, then I would never ask another person to do it, right? And so much of what I do is by let me show you by doing.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Well, I think like some of it, like one of my catchphrases is like fantasy versus reality. And there's like this fantasy of what a master or a dominant looks like, and they sit around and they're lazy or
I have
something.
this throne at home, and I wake up in the morning, I go sit on my throne, and then I order my slaves around for about 13 hours, and then I go back to bed. That's real MS.
Yeah.
Oh my
Well,
God.
you know, even that statement, while I speculate it was fairly facetious, I'm not always great with sarcasm. Um, that is still a lot of effort and work.
Oh,
I
dude.
know a person, slave master, and I don't recall how many girls he has in his house, but he talked about he hasn't put his socks on in over 20 years or something like that. And it's all he knows, but he will speak on how much effort it takes on a day-to-day basis to manage a household and manage it well, right? And he's even talked a little bit, and I don't want to get lost in that, but it's easier for him in more situations to put his own socks on than to wait for a slave to put their socks on. And there's some of the fantasy versus reality when it comes to some of those thoughts.
100%.
But ultimately,
We were
go
talking
ahead.
earlier today around interdependence versus codependence. There was a mistress that I met a couple of years ago. She moved to New York, and I had known her. She was international. And when her relationship ended with her submissive, she said, I was lost. I didn't know what to do because they had been taking care of things for X amount of years. And then it was done. And I didn't know what to do. In our conversation today, because we do a daily TikTok at noon where we talk, we process questions from our mentorship program in real time, and we take an hour processing. Like today was good examples of DS. And you would think, I got maybe 10, 15 minutes of that max into it. You start to unpack it and you start to see how far reaching it is. So in that conversation came up masters who find purpose in essentially white knighting submissives and slaves. Because without me, you can't overcome. And it brings a sense of purpose and a sense of responsibility into a person's purview. And then there's the other side of that where it's like, the only thing I can do for you is guide you or walk with you, but you have to do everything yourself because we're both adults, and you need to be able to manage your end of the bargain if we're going to fly. And by fly meaning I will help you get to your dreams and you help me get to my dreams. But you have to be able to put your oxygen mask on first. And I appreciate structure from power exchanges. I was telling Kat earlier today, I'm the reluctant Dom. I've probably been in one power exchange that I wanted to be in because the others were like, Joshua, I trust you. Can you help? Or I see you're in trouble. Can I help? And it was like we work together to circumventing life's ups and downs. So it's like I understand finding purpose within connections, but you put a lot of the responsibility on your partner within that context, and that can, as when I was a new Dom, right? That's what I thought was my role in it. Is I was white knighting.
Oh yeah.
And clearly it didn't work out, but to the detriment.
Right, because you can't, we likened it to child rearing too. It's like you can't do something for someone that they have to learn how to do for themselves, right? Like you can't spoon feed and handhold submissives through things, especially if there's any kind of a learning curve involved. Like a person has to be given the space and the freedom to fumble around and to make the mistakes and to not do it right. And that usually requires some, the kind of patience on the dominant side, on the D side, patience with themselves to watch someone struggle and to not step in and make it be faster or make it be easier or shortcut the process. You just have to have the patience and the love and the tolerance to be able to let somebody do it their way, even if their way is not a good way for the first 10 times they do it.
The other part of that is the mental health concerns or circumstances.
Well, that's
if there's mental health issues that aren't being addressed, that's a big factor into these processes.
Yes. Yeah, that opens up another whole can of worms, the whole mental health stuff.
Which to say, it doesn't mean a person shouldn't pursue power exchange dynamics or relationships as long as they're taking care of their mental health.
Right.
And don't put that on somebody else.
And dominants shouldn't be confused to think that they can help with things that are outside of their purview.
Yes.
Right. Unless you have letters at the end of your name, you are not qualified to help someone with their medical issues and mental health.
But even then, it's a conflict of interest.
Exactly.
I have a short blog post I want to interject here. I have a feeling it might resonate with you. I'm a dominant, not a doctor. My role in your life is to offer guidance, not fix you. Your issues with insecurity, jealous, envy, quality of attention, etc., are things that I cannot fix, nor is it my responsibility. There's nothing wrong with me trying to make you happy and comfortable. There is a problem with me trying to fill the voids that are inside of you. And I think that goes back to that fantasy versus reality. And I've had to check myself because I've thought that I'm a fixer, I'm a healer in many ways. And I've had long discussions with some wonderful humans about the healing properties that can be part of authority transfer or BDSM as a whole. But at the same time, that's not my responsibility unless if I agree and they agree as well. So I have something I call like the 3 layers of support, for lack of better words. I can support you in silence. I can support you in solution, or I can support you from a distance. How you choose for me to support you is your choice to make. My responsibility is to offer that support. I don't want the authority to determine how you receive support. Now, at some point, I may take that authority when I feel that I have enough information to determine what level of support you need at that time. But more often than not, you ask someone that 1 or 2 times and you know how they like to receive support.
I like that. The other thing that I was thinking in the wake of what you said a second ago is none of us can fill the void that's inside of another, right? That good orderly direction, that power that is the only thing in my estimation that fills that void or does that healing work. All we can do for one another is facilitate. What I do is I facilitate your connection to your spirit. That is what fills your void. I can't do that. The only thing I can hope to do is facilitate your connection to the power, to the source that does that, right? But I think people get confused that they think they are the power or the source, particularly dominance. And I mean, there's an element of it that can get us in our heads and make us think that we're bigger, badder, more powerful than we really are. And that's understandable, given how things are looked at societally in terms of, lead relationships. I like the way you put that at the beginning, like the science about even a lead relationship is that, being edgy in our society to even think that we should say out loud that one person leads and another person follows. When in fact, that's the truth.
That's the truth.
Most all relationships are led by
All
someone.
relationships are authority-based. Most people just don't know who has the authority.
Right.
But they know because you can feel it. You can feel it. And it's like, I was talking about this earlier today. There was this couple that I knew. I knew the woman who used to work for Cat, and she was a mistress. And she was married to this guy. They were from upstate, and the gentleman was raised in a rural area, so he was conservative by culture. Him, he's the dominant because he's the man. Her, she's the boss because she's making the decisions, but in her mind, she's submissive to him. And it's like, take a break, take a breather. Who makes the decisions at home? She says, I do. Who's the one that like governs everything? I do. Who's that makes the big decisions? I do. The obvious thing here is it's a female-led relationship, but he's resisting because culture says he's supposed to be the dominant. It's like and I said to them, I said, listen, just listen to your wife for 2 weeks and see what happens. Just do what she says. And sure as shit, the relationship, it got better. But then at a point, ego kicked in and I was like, blah, 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 I'm a guy, and it all shit itself again. But it's like, if you just sit with the energy of who's the lead and who's the follower, it's just a dance. And it's not necessarily about power, but who is the one with the most information. Now, with that being said, well, what if you're the dom with less experience than the sub? Well, let the sub lead. Let the sub teach you, because that's the other thing about dominance is you are always a student, and you're a student. If this submissive has more experience than you, allow them to teach you, because that's a characteristic that I would want in someone who is leading me, that they can adjust and adapt and learn and grow.
Absolutely. This makes me think of, actually, I just had a conversation with a business acquaintance earlier today about this. And I've always had this story about a ship or a boat, if you will, in business. And the goal is this boat's going to take us in some meaningful direction. We're going to go to an island because we want to go to an island. We want to pay our bills. We want to have a healthy, authority-based relationship, whatever that direction is. So me and a non-zero sum of people negotiate for the roles that are on this boat. Somebody's going to row, somebody's going to steer, somebody's going to navigate. If the person doesn't row, does it matter if the person steers? If the person doesn't navigate, does it matter if the person steers and rows? At the end of the day, in my head, when you get on a ship and you plan to go in a meaningful direction, whatever that is defined by the people on the boat, if everybody doesn't do to the fullest of their capability and capacity the role that they agreed to and the responsibilities that they agreed to, then it doesn't matter if anybody does anything at that point in many ways. And from my perspective, no one person is necessarily inherently more valuable to that boat, because I can't steer and row. I can't row and navigate. You know, everybody wants to say they're multitaskers, but trust me, you can't, you know? So I've always really tried to approach my relationships, whether it's been business or personal, with that thought process, that this is a team. Even if I joke in my relationships, you can come on my team, just know that I own the team. I don't play for the team, I own the team. Okay? I'm not the point guard, I'm the owner, right? Nonetheless, that's my role. So I want to go back. You talked about Healthy's examples of DS. So I have a funny one for you. If you've ever seen Big Bang,
I have.
Sheldon. Okay, it's one of my favorite shows. It's a very like cult classic. There's like 13 or 14 seasons. But if you get on YouTube, you can look at examples of their relationships where people are putting like shorts up of it being a DS relationship. They have a negotiated relationship contract. When they violate it, he spanks her or punishes her, or they have clear date nights on when they're going to do said things. And this is all hidden in a mainstream TV show. But if you look at through the whole spectrum of their relationship, before they get into a relationship, they negotiate and they come up with like, I think it's like a 32-page relationship contract, right? And where, like, if he gets sick, she has to take care of him and sing this song and bring him warm tea. And like, it's a good example, and it's something that can connect to a more vanilla crowd. It might be worth familiarizing yourself with a relationship.
I've seen a few episodes occasionally, but I had no idea that was all woven into that TV show. That's crazy.
I don't know if it was fully intentional, right? But if, from my perspective, when you look at their relationship, the fact that they negotiated it, they developed clear lines and boundaries and roles and what was
A contract?
That's too much coincidence. We got to find the writers and reverse engine.
fair enough. So now we're almost an hour in, and we're going to get to our second question. But you know what? This has been a phenomenal conversation. So we got to the question about how you guys met. Now, can you share the moment? Yeah, right.
Okay.
But that's what I told you. Like, ultimately, I just want to have a good conversation, and all of this has been phenomenal for me, and I imagine the audience as well. But I would like to at least try to ask a couple of the questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Can you share the moment that you guys realized that you wanted to build something larger, like the Kink Collective?
So when I broke up with my ex, I had already been building. So Cat's events were more swing-based, steering into BDSM and kink.
Yeah, that's fair.
All of my events were BDSM events, and with my breakup, I needed a place to keep the events going. So Cat and I got together, and I started hosting the events with her. But in that process, when I was grieving and when I was going through all my shit around the breakup and the dissolution of the relationship, it was like I had core values and expectations in what I wanted to create within BDSM, things that I thought was missing that I needed to have present for the space that I held. And it's about equality. Everyone has a name. You come in as a person. Ultimately, the formula people before kink came to pass. And that was from Cat and us and myself processing together. What do we do? And we were speaking about what's important for us, why leather, what's the intention. And we sat there in decadence in the front social area, at least a day or two of just talking it through. And Kink Collective came up, and it was through
I remember
a
the
WhatsApp
moment.
group.
I remember the moment it came.
Yep, we sent it to a couple of Leather family members, because by then we had established the Leather. No, we didn't establish the Leather family came from.
Right.
So that's how it came to pass. Is we want to create a specific energy for the kink spaces we create, and that evolved into 6 years later. It's evolved into intensives, different types of reflection, review, integration processes where a person can dive deeper in the different layers of education that we host, depending on their level of investment of, well, how much do I want to know about myself within this context? And it's like an onion. Once you peel the layer back, you know there's more to go, and then it just keeps unraveling.
Yeah, we started from the standpoint of, creating safe space, creating the kinds of spaces that we wanted to have people be in, that were the kinds of spaces we wanted to be in. But over time, and then COVID, and then taking everything back to the drawing board once again, we were also, I keep forgetting to include this always, we were gifted a curriculum that we ended up basing things off of.
Gil Kessler from GMSMA, Gay Men's S&M Association, I believe it was, from the 80s to early 2000, they created a curriculum that was very technical based. And Gil was a math teacher. He had this shit down to the minute, what's to be said, to who, what's instructed. Phenomenal.
Probably still to this day, the most detailed and excellent primer on scene preparation that I've seen anywhere.
Incredible. But what was missing was it was taught transactionally. What are you into? This is what I'm into. And then we can build off of what our curiosities are. And that conflicted with people before kink as a philosophy. So what do? We took that curriculum. Thank you, Gil Kessler.
Thank you, COVID. Thank you, all of the things that sat us in the pressure cooker that was our apartment by ourselves with whiteboards and markers and days and days and days of taking this curriculum, pulling it apart, measuring it up against all of the experience that I had as a club space owner, that he had as a pro dom. We put it all sort of together, and what came out of it was this sort of educational model that we've been running with ever since.
Because the idea is, when we meet people either one-on-one or on an event level, we help people learn how to talk, how to advocate for themselves, how to negotiate, how to say yes and no. And instead of working one-on-one with a person, how could we make this larger? How could we teach people to do it for themselves?
Yeah, because part of what we really realized is that, as simple as it sounds, the most fundamental piece of all of this is self-awareness. Who am I? And do I know myself? And do I understand my value? Right? Because when I know myself and I understand my value, then can I show up and negotiate appropriately? Then can I show up and I have my oxygen mask on at that point. Until I know who I am and I know my value, I don't have my oxygen mask on. So I'm not as much use to myself or anyone until I have that. And so that was the piece that we brought into all of this, like, really advanced kink training and event space holding and whatever, is a process by which people could come to know themselves and understand their value.
And the spirituality part comes into this part of, when you start to reflect, are your choices yours or what's expected of you? And that's where the door opens, because it's like, well, wait a second.
Well, that's the difference between the internal and the external, the spirituality and the religion. Religion, for a lot of people, tells people from the outside what it is that they should believe, or how it is that they should think, right?
So it's like the ability to process. If, for example, anal sex in men, male-bodied folks, oh my God, I'm gay. Right, that's like the cultural staple of, if you like anything in your butt, that means you're gay. And it's like, imagine people have to contend with that. So how many men, male-bodied folks, don't explore their own body because of the fear of judgment from the higher being, or whatever have you? It's like, there was this one time I was sitting in the space and I was by myself. My slave had just left, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I was talking to myself in my mind about my curiosities around anal sex and my inability to cross that bridge and I was having this dialogue with myself in the mirror, and all this shame came up. It's like, how can you, as a professional dom, be walking through people through reconciling their relationship with self, sexuality, identity, and yet you're here afraid? And then I got angry with myself, and it was this whole fucking roller coaster. It was really wild. Kat was on the other side of the phone when I hit that wall, but it was like, I ended up taking out some gloves, some lube, and just going to town on myself, because it was like, I have to practice what I preach. If I'm curious about it, quit fucking being a fucking punk and do it, because it's your body, dude. Like, I was talking to myself like that. It's like, it's your body. It's your rights. It's your privilege. It's yours. Do with it what you must. And once that door opens, listen, I'm a fucking slut now, but it changed everything, because it was like, who cares?
I think that you hit on something. A lot of times, I think shame is more internal than external that we think. We're worried what other people will think, but I'm just going to be a butthead here. Most other people are so lost in themselves, they really don't care about you. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, there are people in your life that genuinely care about you, and those people are going to encourage and support you in all of the ways, right? But there is a lot of hurdles to overcome, whether in the various demographics, stereotypes, cultural differences, all these things, you know, of what is acceptable and what isn't. I remember a while back, I got in a relationship with a very religious person, and she talked about, like, she since left dogmatic religion, but was raised very, very religious, and how she saved her virginity was anal sex.
That's fair. Yeah,
I've heard that before.
Yep.
Right. And her and the people at her school really thought that was the path, because it saved them the shame of real sex. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, dang, where were these girls when I was growing up? Because anal sex in the 90s and early 2000s, you know, fuck.
That was gold. That was gold.
But that comes down to what I call the difference between the spirit of a law and the letter of the law.
That's the difference between ethics and morals.
Ethics and morals, right?
Right. And I say that because the moral of it is no fucking sex till marriage.
Yeah.
Right? Like the ethics is, well, it's vaginal if I define sex this way. Right.
Yep.
So, and that's like, I got called out, I got called out by the universe. There's a book out there called Surviving Master Joshua, the BDSM memoir of an unfaithful wife. And it was written by my slave Karma. We're together 6 years now. And what happened in this story, part of it is I tried to circumvent morals with ethics, meaning I needed her consent in order to engage with her. She's a married woman. Morally, I needed to make sure they were all on board. But my workaround to it was, I just need her consent and for her to tell me he's okay with it. And that was my workaround. Now, the universe had other plans, right? I learned a lot of lessons because I circumvented ethics, morals with ethics. And we have since learned our lessons by touching many irons down the road. But that's the formula, right? It's like, you can't pick and choose when integrity matters.
Yeah, it's like the measure of integrity is when nobody's looking, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, you know, going back to, like, a lot of my experience comes professionally, because a lot of my flavor of authority is, you know, kind of business model-y, or at least in my head. And I always talked about, I value character more than experience. I cannot teach character ethically or legally. I can offer experience. And if I'm just gonna be honest, I think, like, I don't know, I probably fall in a big pool of dominants or masters or whatever that love to give people new experiences, right? But with that said, it's character that matters. It's an intention of the motivation behind what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah, it's like, am I looking to fill your cup or am I looking to take from your cup? Yeah, because I agree. I'm there with you. I love providing first. My intention when I connect with people is to show you the potential of what this stuff can do. If it's rope, if it's impact, if it's sensation, if it's sensory, I want to show you what it's capable of. Because when you feel it, then it becomes real. Until then, it's all theory.
Well, it's a fantasy versus reality, where, especially when new people come into the community, at least from my limited perspective, you know, they get whatever they've gotten from porn or 50 Shades or blah, blah. There's so much out there now at this point. We can't blame any one thing. We actually should be thankful, because
100%.
I'm on that boat too, because it made it okay to talk about.
100%.
Exactly. And most mental health professionals, most law enforcement, first responders, if you just say, hey, I'm in a 50 Shades type of relationship, they may not know, but they have a grasp now. Yep. My grandfather raised me that if you're only going to be honest with 3 people, it should be your doctor, your lawyer, and your therapist.
Yes.
Right. if you can't be honest with anybody else, and he did exclude yourself, and that's the hardest person to be honest with, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But to be able to go into your doctor or your mental health professional and say, hey, I'm in a 50 Shades type of relationship. Now it's getting more. We look at Netflix. How many shows are on Netflix? How to Build a Sex Room, so on and so forth.
That's the ability to be real with those three is paramount. Doctors, therapists, and lawyers, like, you have to, they are on your, when it comes to picking them, make sure you vibe with them, because not every therapist is aware. This is my thing about mental health professionals. I respect the profession, I respect the intention behind the profession, but how many of them aren't doing their own work and just using the formulas that the book had taught them to help others? It's like, and that's the issue when you spend your time teaching your therapist about BDSM and kink. And when you go to a doctor and the doctor judges you, I had to change my primary care doctor because of his judgment of my profession. It's like, listen, dude, I'm not asking you for your opinion. I'm telling you the circumstances. Work with my circumstances. And
you work for me.
Yeah, dude. It's like, listen. Anyway, but you're 100% correct.
Oh, I already have a feeling we're gonna have to do a part 2 with you guys at some point, right?
Dude, I'm game. And we'll better set up next time.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is great. I mean, like the tech issues, I don't even care. I forgot about them. Who cares? This is just phenomenal. But to keep moving forward, because I do want to try to get through some more of these questions. The next question that I have for you guys is, how has your relationship influenced the vision and the mission of the Kink Collective?
Do you want to answer that one? I can answer that one right away.
Go right ahead.
Our programs are influenced by the work that we have done with and for each other. It's not theoretical. It's like, this is what I needed to hear in order for me to be able to work through this obstacle. And like you said earlier, I like to boil shit down to its foundation, to the base formula of what it is. And then can I take that base formula and present it to you, where you can take your life and lived experiences, fill in certain, if plus X plus Y equals Z, I'm going to ask you for your X, I'm going to ask you for your Y, and then we're going to determine where the Z lands, because it's all mathematical. And this comes back to the creator thing. It's like, while we're all very different, we're all the same. It's just the paint jobs on the circumstances and the outcomes are different, right? Joy is joy, hate is hate, love is love. The emotions are still the same. The formulas to get to those emotions are still the same. It just looks different. So with our relationships and being polyamorous, it's not just me and Kat, but we're working and navigating all the relationships in our lives by the same principles that were put in front of us through leather culture. Don't be a dick, be truthful, open communication, open heart listening, transparency, right? It all matters. And it's not just words. We have to do it. And it's like, when you do it, the byproduct of doing it is the payoff. Because I can talk about the life that I live, or I can live my life, and people can see how I'm living and be like, yo, what the fuck are they doing?
It's funny that how you frame that. I don't want to dig back through my notes and find it exactly, but one of my previous guests, they said trust is a byproduct of action.
Ooh, I like that.
And that, like, once again, that was like a kick in the head. Like, that's so simple. Why didn't I think of that? And it really is. And whenever I talk about trust, I always like to bring up a SpongeBob quote. Patrick. Yeah, I got a daughter, right? But so Patrick, I believe the quote is, he says, SpongeBob, trusting you is my choice. Proving me wrong is your decision.
Oh, wow.
right?
I hated SpongeBob. I wouldn't let my kids watch SpongeBob because of that shit, but that shit is gold.
Yeah.
It's because
Yeah, that
Huh?
it's true.
well, and I talk about unconditional trust. Like, I want trust from people, so therefore I have to set that example and I have to trust people. And I can't carry the baggage from my childhood trauma, my previous personal relationships that failed or faltered for whatever reason, so on and so forth. I'm not saying that I come into a relationship with a clean slate, because I don't think anybody truly does. When I think of this, one of the hardest truisms, and I almost like gulp every time I have to say it, is in order to become a good partner, you learn at the expense of your previous partners, good, bad, and ugly. You learn what you want, what you don't want, and what you won't tolerate, right? Or what you're willing to tolerate. And I sit back and I really think about some of those past relationships and the growth that has stemmed from it. But once again, you have to be willing to look internally, look in the mirror, ask yourself the questions like, yes, that was a great MS relationship, but why did it fizzle out? Why did it falter? Where was the disconnect?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about being right or wrong. Once again, it's value neutral. But if I want to have a better relationship the next time, I better do the internal reflection on the last time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I when I went through the breakup with the ex and the next half a decade that followed through the character assassination and the stalking, I had, and this is around the time I've been working at it at a point from failures to lessons, that transition from perspective. And I was I was in the room, and I forget who I was talking to, but it dawned on me. It's like, the reason why you got burned so hard is because you've been lying for so long in your relationships. And the universe said, you need to stop that shit. So I'm going to fucking shove this big, hard fucking life lesson down your throat. And either you're going to adjust or you're not. And it's like, we need that to reflect on, what didn't I do right? Where could I do better in order to make the adjustments? And it's continuous. Because, I mean, we've been together for 6 years and I'm still learning lessons the hard way. You know, good, bad, or indifferent, it's like, it's necessary.
I think, you know, and I'm not trying to speak out of turn, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you needed that lesson. And I think that a lot of times those lessons are delivered in ways that we don't want. If we wanted them, we probably wouldn't learn them.
The
right?
universe will always deliver a lesson in a smaller, lighter form. It's when you don't heed the earlier lesson that the universe will ever so slightly crank it up until it becomes so, you know, the whatever that immovable force meet, you know, the irresistible force meets the immovable object. Like,
yeah, no, I moved a lot.
Right. And that's been my experience. I mean, like, I have lots of experiences, my own and others included, that say that the universe is patient with us in terms of lesson learning. But it gets cranked up over time.
I think of a quote and I don't remember it exactly. I tried to figure it out real quick, but I couldn't. So if anybody knows it, and I'm misspeaking, but it says, sometimes the universe does for you what you can't do for yourself.
Easily,
absolutely,
easily. And that's what I think. Majority of the lessons I'm learning and I have learned come from my resistance to wanting to take the action. Right? It was like the 3-year plan turning to a 3-month plan. There was nothing holding us back from making the move, aside from the lease.
Aside from a lease.
But it was like, why? Like, we are able and capable. Why not? And it's like, say yes, as long as it doesn't conflict with your morals. Take the hard road, because it will lighten up every time. Every time. And that's where faith comes in. It's like, my faith was developed through consistency of cause and effect, meaning I try to do what is right, and right comes back to me. You had mentioned something about it coming to a point where it's even so minimal. I was at Home Depot one time, and this is my faith and my leaning into karma. I was at Home Depot. I was supposed to get some chain. It was like 3 feet of chain, shit chain, to hang these bullshit buckets off of someone's balls at Folsom Street. And it came out to like 4 something. But the way they wrote the SKU was wrong. So it wouldn't register. And the cashier said, listen, just go, or you're good. And I'm like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah. I said, look, I can go down and get the SKU. She was like, just go. So I took the bag and I walked out. And here in New York City, the Home Depot is between 5th and 6th Avenue. It's like Home Depot in the city. Kind of weird. So I turned to the left and I start walking. Next to Home Depot was Outback. Significance being, I make the left and I start walking and I get to the property line of Home Depot where Home Depot met Outback. And before I could step over the threshold, I turned, went, got the fucking SKU and paid for my chain. It was $4, $3, but it was like, I need to do that because consistency has shown me this is the thing to do.
Yeah. Consistency makes everything, right? And even though like sometimes we may have temptation or intrusive thoughts, right? It goes back to character. Character helps create consistency. And sometimes it's not easy. It's not always easy to be honest, especially when it's going to destroy reputation, or so on and so forth. But you talked earlier about like when the Me Too movement hit the kink community and like everybody scattered. Those were the bad people. I don't know your story, but the fact that you stayed, the fact that you reflected, that shows me that you're not bad. Maybe did you make mistakes? I don't know. I'm not a judge, I'm not a juror, and I don't really want those responsibilities. But you're present. Very, very early on, actually, one of my mentors comes from New York City. I don't know if you're familiar with Flag. He passed 2009, I believe. Soul Hunter was another of the people that ran with Flag, and Sir C, I believe at Club Hellfire, early 2000s. Nonetheless, they asked me a lot of hard questions, and I kind of ran from my thought of where I was originally going. But one of them was essentially just, it's hard to be true to self. And to understand the intentions of your desires. And Soul Hunter specifically has really helped me suss out my desires and removed my shame. I used to carry a lot of shame that I was a bad human because I like to do bad things to people. Well, now I get people that praise me and thank me and rub my feet, and sometimes they even go and get me a cup of tea afterwards. So is it a bad thing? No, I would say it's a really good thing with consent, with communication and so on and so forth. And I think like what I'm really trying to get at is I'm thankful for the BDSM community because it's allowed me to be me. Partly because everybody else is doing weird shit too, right? So it promotes me to be like, well, it's not that weird anymore, right? But also it goes back to how do I want to frame that? I think it just that catchword of authenticity. A lot of times, at least for my experience, when I was in the vanilla world, I picked up a lot of morals or ethics or values from other people. I really didn't know them. I didn't care. I was just like, yeah, I'm honest. But I didn't know what honesty meant. Not to me. Oh, yeah, I don't cheat. Turns out I just would break up with people instead of cheating. Was that moral? Was that integrity? I ruined a lot of good relationships early on in life instead of just saying, hey, I'm not sexually monogamous. It's taken me a very long time to realize I'm emotionally monogamous, and that's a whole nother freaking story. Because if I got to pick, I would. If I'm just saying for simplicity's sakes, I wish I was monogamous. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
I digress from all of this. Um,
No, but it matters. Like, I'm going to come back to the priest, because him and I spoke. Well, what does God want of you? And he says, well, he wants me to lead a life that brings light and fulfillment. And what does he not want from you? What brings darkness and takes from people? And I said, well, what was our process like? Was it filling or was it taking? And he said it was filling. It was like, so if that's what you believe, God wants from you, then allow it to be. Just because it doesn't look the way you think it should, doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes back to that whole value neutral, right? And I mean, we've done a lot of really good things for bad reasons and bad things for good reasons. And ultimately, I think that there's a Don Luis quote, I can't remember exactly, but the level of abuse we allow someone to commit upon us is just a little bit less than what we'll commit to on our own self.
Yep.
And then as soon as someone abuses us just a little bit more than we abuse ourselves, we check out. We call it abuse. We call it malicious contact. We break up, so on and so forth. But as long as they abuse us just a little bit less than we abuse our own selves, more than likely we'll stay in that relationship and tolerate it endlessly. And if anything, it'll help justify our own self-abuse. And as we abuse ourselves more and more, all that does is allow that person to abuse us more and more. Because remember, we allow others to abuse ourselves just a little bit less than what we abuse. So I guess what I'm kind of getting at is I'm very appreciative that you were willing to share your story about the shame that is attached to men and so on and so forth. That is probably not something easy to share. I'm guessing you may have shared that in the past. I think it's really important for everybody that's listening to stop judging ourselves, right? It, like you said, it's your body, it's your mind, it's your spirit, it's your playground.
I'd like to take it back to Eminem and 8 Mile, that last rap battle, where he fucking lays it all out. He just puts it all out there. And it's like, what else can you do to me?
Yep.
If there's nothing to hide, what are you going to do? There's nothing you would do. And that is extremely, extremely powerful. But it's like, you have to process your own life. You have to reconcile your relationship with your identity, with others, with faith. Like, you have to dig in and understand where you stand. And then can you be firm and no one take it from you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody has a bad breakup or made mistakes or this, that, or the other, and ultimately stand firm, stand by your convictions. And that's where I've had to have my life shaken a few times. I had a malicious person vow to destroy me to the point that I had to get a emergency protection order against this person because they drove from out of state and showed up at my property. Nonetheless, I lost friends, a lot of friends, what I thought were friends, didn't even ask me. And this is where I leaned on some people to some level. I got in front of it. I'm like, look, I'll admit, I've made mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes. I'll tell you, I'm the first person they'll tell you I've injured a non-zero sum of people in rope. And I know I've been suspended people since 2008, and I probably should just have more experience. Well, crunch those numbers. I've been suspending humans for 16 years. How much more experience do you think I can get? I've injured people, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. I probably will injure another person along my journey. You play football long enough, you tie rope, you suspend humans, you're going to make a mistake. It's going to happen eventually. And like you said, if you have no secrets, you have no shame, you have no fear. I have no problems discussing the mistakes that I've made. Am I proud of them? No. But at the end of the day, it was part of who I was. It was choices that I made in those moments, and I'll own them, good, bad, or ugly.
Yep.
With that said, it creates those paths of learning, right? And it, just like you, when my world was shaken, I appreciated it. It was hard, but it showed me the people that I needed in my life, and it showed me the people I didn't need in my life. And I'll just keep it that simple. So I want to try to get this wrapped up. I know we're pushing an hour and a half. I have a bunch of questions left. I'm not sure which ones matter most. So I'd like to at least get a couple out here that really touch on you guys. And then, like I said, if we need to in a few months, we'll go ahead and plan to come back and do a part 2.
We have a time constraint on our side.
Okay.
We definitely want to come back and do a part 2. But we're working with logistics within a mall where we had our exhibit.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
have to close it down soon.
Okay. So I think then the we'll go ahead and end with, what future goals do you have with the Kink Collective?
So what we're doing now with our mentorship program is reverse engineering it to a few different layers, where we have a 6-month mastermind program, which the mentorship program is evolving into. We have a 6-week mentorship program, which is in the chute. We have our weekend intensives, which are 2-day intensives, and then we have an online version, which is 8 hours long. We have our, essentially what's going to be speed dating, but it's really about connection. And all of these are built around, how do I establish and build the relationships of fantasy, of the things that I dream about? How do I really get there?
We want to help everybody achieve the relationships of their dreams.
Sounds great. All right, so one more quick question. Well, one more formal question, and then we'll let you guys. I have a couple final questions, I suppose. Last question would be, how can listeners get involved or support the work that you're doing with the Kink Collective?
Well, they can reach us by coming to the website or emailing us. That's the simplest and easiest way. We're also on all of the social media outlets, but kinkcollective.net. That's the website.
It's already in the chat.
There it is. So
kinkcollective.net and Kink Collective on all social media platforms.
Awesome. Well, we will have to plan a time when you guys are less busy in the next couple months. I know you said you got a lot going on, and we'll have to do a part 2 because this discussion was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
With that said, the last thing I have for you is shameless plugs. We already got your website out there, but where else can we find you? You already talked about your social media, but do you have any classes that are coming up really soon? You got a book, right? You got a book that's for sale. What else do you have out there?
We have Surviving Master Joshua, which you can search on Google, because if you tried going onto Amazon, it's actually on page 47 of the ebooks. So Google Surviving Master Joshua for the nonfiction book. We have a weekend intensive actually starting tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is our 48-hour intensive. And it's around introspection, reflection, review, and integration. How to be the best version of yourself, and how to hold space and vet or discern who are you giving your time, your body, and your resources to. Very, very deep diving weekend intensive here in New York City. We have every Tuesday nights, we have Kinky Conversations, which is Eastern time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And then we have Beyond the Collar, which is from 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern Standard Time.
I've attended a couple of those.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, the Beyond the Collar, you guys have some really good discussions. And it's good to see the curtain pulled back a little bit sometimes.
It's only going to change. I'm actually going to be on the panel starting next month, where we get to get a larger perspective on it.
Awesome. Well, let's get you guys out of here. Make sure you get out of this mall in time.
Thank you.
Once again, I can't say how much I appreciate your guys' time, Master Joshua, Mistress Cat.
It's been
Congratulations. What's that?
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, until next time, guys. We'll see ya.